back, Pokemon trainers, to the Wide League Charity Rumble Toys for Tots edition. Don't forget to hit the exclamation point charity or donate to get involved. We're currently at a $380. Uh, we're currently at $380. We're looking to hit that $400 mark by the end of the night. So please be sure to at least get some sort of attention towards it if you can't donate yourself. Or if you can donate yourself, hit that link up right there in the bottom. Before we left, we saw the beginnings of another Regulation H Classic. Got some Calyrex in there, got some Ogerpon in there, and the Water Bear returns. Gerd, how you doing?
Yeah, we got a whole new set of restricted Pokemon coming up for you in this round number 2. We got Shishio and we got Glory was here. And it looks like instead of two different restricteds, we're getting one restricted, but on the same side. We got a Koraidon mirror. It is going to be a very interesting match. It's going to be a bunch of
Baby.
photosynthesis past paradox Pokemon fighting it out. What's a normal staples on your own side of the field. So let's talk about this real quick. So we got those Koraidons for Gloria was here. Champao, Entei, a little bit of an interesting pick. You don't see a lot of Enteis. Entei was very solid in the beginning of Regulation F, but kind of waned as it kind of lost popularity for different attackers. You got Rillaboom, pretty standard set, U-turn, fake out, Woodhammer, Grassy Glide, Assault Vest, Terrifier, Raging Bolt. It is going to be the Calm Mind variant, which has the potential to snowball later on if you let it set up for free in that Whimsicott. And why don't you tell us about Shishio?
Yeah, Shishio also has a Raging Bolt up there, but this one's the Protect, Thunderclap, and Draco Meteor aspect of it. No Calm Mind to be found, but it's more of the attacking variant there. Got the basic Incineroar, Fake Out, Will-O-Wisp. Actually, sorry, a Will-O-Wisp instead of Flare Blitz on this Incineroar, going for the burn instead of the extra damage that Flare Blitz offers as well. And then the rest of the kit knockoff Parting Shot with the Terra Ghost and safety goggles there. Ursaluna returns here with the partnership of Chain Pow, which is something that I don't really think I've seen before. In theory, could be pretty solid together, but the speed tiers kind of differentiate in such a weird way that it might be a little bit of a double-edged sword there. Chain Pow obviously doing the real basic Chain Pow sets. Got a Sash, got a Sword of Ruin up there, Protect. Ice Spinner to get rid of those terrains, Throat Chop for getting rid of the Incineroar threat, and Sucker Punch to threaten anything that wants to hit with low HP. Another one of these basic Flutter Main, the basic choice spec Flutter Main sets as well. Moonblast, Shadow Ball, Dazzling Gleam, and Power Gem as well. Fairy for the extra damage on the Terra type. And the Koraidon for the Mirror is in here to fire Terra type, Collision Course, Flare Blitz, Flame Charge for the speed boost, and Protect to round it all off. Some interesting things to see here, and a lot of it revolves around that the return of another aspect of this Scarlet and Violet VGC VGC I guess sets are that Chain Pow, another of the ruin Pokemon that we saw last game.
Yeah, something that's a little bit different with this Champao that we're seeing on Shishio's side is normally Champaos typically run 3 moves. Well, if you and not including protect, obviously, but 3 attacking moves. Normally, it's some sort of variation between Ice Spinner and Icicle Crash that's running Ice Spinner primarily to get rid of those terrains, but also you have to deal with this fact that it is a contact move, so you are susceptible to things like Rocky Helmet. I do not believe it's going to be mattering in this match, but something to keep note of if you're ever wondering how to play the Champao later on in Regulation G when it returns or in future regulations. It does have Sucker Punch, which is a pretty common dark type moves that it does get. That priority is very nice against faster Pokemon to get those picks later on in a match. But it also does have that throat chop, which you don't really often see. Typically, that final attacking move is typically seen as Sacred Sword, so you can hit those you can hit something like a Terapagos for super effective damage. You can hit those other fighting type weak Pokemon like those Ursalunas, Blood Moon, and the regular Hisuian variant too for that extra damage. So this one's a little bit different. I want to do shout out real quick that this set from Shishio for the Incineroar does have that Will-O-Wisp. So a Will-O-Wisp into that Koraidon is definitely in play if the Koraidon does not go for Terra Fire. So that is something that we did see earlier on in Regulation D, where those Incineroars actually dropping Flare Blitz entirely. So really only using knockoff as its primary attacking move, besides Fake Out, of course, to really get that burn, because that burn damage does matter on. And we also do see substitute Ursaluna, the regular one, not Blood Moon. So that is giving you that extra potential to survive attacks later on and then sweep when you're behind the doll.
I mean, Ursaluna hits like a truck, and that guts boost from Flame Orb is just unbelievable in nearly every sense of Pokemon, and we're probably gonna see it do some damage here as we go into our game one here with Shishio and Glory was here. How do you approach this as almost I think 3 of the 6 Pokemon are mirrored here?
Yeah, it's going to be tough because you do recognize that you're both bringing Koraidon, right? So it's really up to how the training is. Game one is more of an information battle than I would say, where you really want to be careful on what the speed tiers are. Like you mentioned earlier, the Raging Bolt does have the Thundercrab Dracometer Thunderbolt set, whereas the Raging Bolt on Glory was here side doesn't have that Thunderbolt. It does have that Calm Mind, so a Calm Mind boosted Raging Bolt can sometimes do really well into other Raging Bolts, but it's gotta be careful because there's no Terra Fairy on either one, so you kind of have to deal with those Draco Meteors on both sides for doing so much damage.
And then we got the lead here with the Whimsicott, the baby boy as its nickname, ready to toss out tailwinds and support moves as much as possible. That thing is an annoyance to nearly everybody who's ever come up against it, but I think the easy counterplay is just to not hit protect really in front of it and just try to do as much damage as possible. Even with the tailwind, the Raging Bolt on the side of Glory is actually still slower, but oh my goodness, surviving with 1 HP. The Draco Meteor coming out. Is that going to pick it up on this side?
It looks like it did. So the
Oh my
Raging Bolt
god.
is going to be going down immediately on this first turn after taking that Dazzling Gleam and Draco Meteor double up. But the opposing Raging Bolt is also going to be going down at the same time, I presumably believe because of the life or recoil while it survived on about 1 HP. So now a double switch for both players is going to be required. Koraidon, the restricted legendary of Scarlet and Violet, going to be switching in. And we do see the Incineroar going to be coming in, providing that Intimidate. But it looks like it's not going to matter because of that clear amulet.
And now you kind of have obviously the Koraidon's most likely going to protect here to prevent getting hit by a by fake out and super effective damage. While there might be some sort of prankster move incoming here from actually he's going straight. Looks like it might be a switch out here because there isn't really much the support can really help with at the moment. But Koraidon most likely protecting straight in here or Terra firing to avoid getting too much damage from either the fake out damage or the extra damage on Moonblast, which is quad at the current moment. And but you're also just in a really bad position if you're Shishio because you if you throw your Koraidon out, you are just slower at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to really understand this positioning. We are going to be seeing a switch out on that Whimsicott, trying to keep it alive for later on, maybe trying to set up a tailwind later on in this match. And the Entei is going to be coming out. It is a choice banded Entei, so it's going to be doing significant amount of damage, especially in the sun with that Sacred Fire or other types of attacks. There's going to be a switch out. It's actually going to be the opposing Koraidon. The Koraidons are now both on the field trying to fight it out. And the terastallization, presumably on to Glory was here side. It's going to be terrestrialized into a fire type, trying to resist those fairy type attacks. Remember that Flutter Mane was choice locked into Dazzling Gleam, so it wouldn't have taken that much more damage. It looks like it's going to be a flame charge. No terrestrialization on the Incineroar into Ghost to try to survive a collision course. But
Wow.
look at that damage,
Oh
almost
my god.
25% gone. And now you get that extra speed boost.
And Entei's gonna eat this parting shot here, and Incineroar's gonna go right back to Shishio's side here. But now you have a +1 speed Koraidon that doesn't need the tailwind anymore to outspeed um at least their Koraidon, and there might be I don't know what the photosynthesis boost is going to give towards the Shishio side. The speed is heightened, so it might not outspeed the Fluttermane yet, but definitely outspeeding the opposing Koraidon and giving that pressure there. But Looks like Entei is just going to straight hit that with Flare Blitz into the Flutter Mane spot to get rid of that. And it's really scary if you're Shishio right now because again, you're getting speed crept in a mirror is terrifying no matter what Pokemon you have out there.
Yeah, especially in the mirror match, you almost always want to be faster because you do get the information game that you know you're faster. So that means you get to attack off first. Looks like the Fluttermane is going to be switching back into the Incineroar, trying to tank any attack that you could potentially take. Obviously, you do not get the Intimidates onto either Pokemon because of the inner focus onto that Entei, and because of the clear amulet on Koraidon still has not been knocked off yet. Terrestrialization is going to be activated onto the opposing Koraidon. Terrifier is going to be the option trying to survive some sort of attack. I'm probably just trying to make sure you just have it for now. Flare Blitz in the sun. Koraidon with that extra boosted damage because of your ability still doing
Oof.
50% to an Incineroar.
Ay, ay, ay. That is a resisted Pokemon with a ton of HP and a ton of defense, and it still did half of its damage. That is crazy, but it looks like the opposing Koraidon is going to bring out this collision course, going to get that big damage in there and barely surviving in there. 11 HP right now, but still having the advantage speed tier wise. And both these Pokemon now are at a extremely, extremely low HP number. And it really comes down to how Shishio runs this.
Yeah, you got to think about the fact that the Incineroar could go for Fake Out here into either Pokemon. Obviously, the inner focus keeps you alive, or not alive, but it keeps you prevented from getting flinched. But into that Koraidon, it could pick up a KO. Honestly, if it doesn't go for Protect, you could switch into Whimsicott. You still have it in the back. But is that something you want to do? Deciding to save the Whimsicott for now, just going to go for Protect. Is it a Fake Out into this Pokemon? No, the Stoppage Tantrum is actually going to be going into the Incineroar, picking up that KO from about half HP. So now this Fluttermane is in position to start doing some damage, but the Koraidon still has that speed boost from that flame charge, and the opposing Koraidon from Shishio still has to force switch in.
Now, I believe it's still +1 over there on Koraidon. Is that enough to outspeed the speed boosted Fluttermane in the sun? Is the question. Because you
So
just protected in that situation. So if you're slower, you are going down here.
if Fluttermane and
It is.
Koraidon, wow. I was about to say Fluttermane and Koraidon actually have the same base speed stat, but it looks like the actual base speed or the actual speed stat of both Pokemon are slightly different, or it could have been a speed tie depending on how they were trained. We might have to get the information later on because that is going to be very important for both players to understand. Collision Course going into this Entei, going to be picking up that KO from that HP range, almost 90% gone. So what was originally a bad position for Shishio has completely turned it around thanks to that pivoting and Fluttermane switching in at the right time. The Whimsicott is now stuck on the field against two giants of the game, and it's looking like it's going to be Glory doing a forfeit in game number one.
I mean, it's really rough to, especially if they to have to play with knowing that you're going to be going into a speed tie. But again, but I do think that there could have been another flame charge thrown in there, especially because there was so much switching having to go around there from Shishio to survive and not take much damage. And it actually turned out pretty well for him, especially because Sun just stayed up the entire time of that game. And with that extra speed boost from the Fluttermane, you were able to pick up that KO with a nice dazzling gleam.
Yeah, and just talking about it, we just talked about it, where both Fluttermane and Koraidon have the same base speed stat. So in that situation, you have to think about it in this way. When you speed tie, it is a 50-50 chance for one of your Pokemon to move first. In this situation, that you know that the Fluttermane has now moved before your Koraidon, you can only assume that either you're speed tying with the Fluttermane, which means it's random, in terms of 50-50 chance to move first, or the Fluttermane on the opposing side is always going to be moving first. So there's almost never a situation where this Koraidon is faster ever outside of that 50-50 chance. So that is something you have to keep in mind because I would say in this match, because it is a Koraidon mirror, we're going to be seeing Sun up most of the time. And that means that that photosynthesis is
And we will see that coming in here once again into this game too. Shishio versus Glow is here. And we now see that Chain Pow coming out right here. And then Incineroar and Raging Bolt on the other end. Entei also here to not get intimidated and hold down this nice little spot in here. And I like this lead. Actually, I actually really like this lead, especially because you're threatening both with your Chain Pow and your Entei, even with the Intimidate.
Yeah, the Entei and Champao lead was very common early on in Regulation F, but kind of waned off into mostly trying to consider using that Urshifu more often than not because it's just such a strong core. We do see the fake out going into this Champao not deciding to go for a Terra Ghost to use the Terra early on. Stomping Tantrum is going to be your choice lock of choice. And look at that
Wow.
damage off the Stomping Tantrum doing significant amount of damage. And the Draco Meteor in retaliation, it looks like it is going to be picking up that one hit KO at the cost of 2 drop stages of special attack and that life or recoil still hanging on for now. So now you have Shishio taking such a huge lead in this game number 2.
I mean, like that's the threat of Raging Bolt, regardless of if you run the calm mindset or not, is that it is bulky to no belief. And while we do a little bit go, wow, that was a lot of damage into that Raging Bolt, it still was the 1-for-1 that happened last time. And that puts that puts Glory in a little bit of a backseat position. Losing a Pokemon that early means you have less options, especially because the Pokemon you lost was a heavy hitter in your team.
Yeah, obviously. And obviously you can bring out this restricted Incaridon on the field. It is not going to be hit by those intimidates because of that clear amulet. So even if it does switch out, even if it comes back in later on, it's not a big deal. But you got to deal with the fact that if you went for collision course into that Incineroar, it is now immune because of that ghost type on the Flutter Mane. So that is something you have to consider. You could just go for something like a Flare Blitz and just get that raw damage because if that Flutter Mane were to switch in, you would be able to get the knockout or some really solid damage onto this Incineroar. The Terrestrialization to Terra Fire, get that boosted fire damage. It looks like we are going to be seeing that extra damage. Sucker Punch into this Raging Bolt, picking up the KO even at -1 attack from that previous Intimidate on turn 0. Now it should be this Koraidon going for the Flare Blitz.
Oh,
Looks like it was a call out, but it probably was just the best play you could do, getting that one hit KO onto this
oh, baby.
Fluttermane.
Yeah, that was absolutely lovely from Glory right there. I was gonna say, I think that in that situation, the fire move into that slot is always the correct decision. If you get that speed boost, you still have your full health, are still able to threaten something the next turn, and get your speed up to at least be tying with that, but with Fluttermane, but still being able to take on Koraidon. Flare Blitz was a little bit more of the more risky option because obviously if Incineroar stays in, you do less damage without getting any kind of benefit of a buff. But read that switch out very, very nicely, gets that Oko, and is now able to pick up a much better position here by having a collision course that will do a ton of damage to one of these Pokemon here.
Yeah, in this situation, you have protect on both Pokemon, so it is a completely safe play to just protect on both, not trying to risk a fake out. But it looks like the
Yeah.
Koraidon is actually going to be taking the fake out. Let's see what the opposing Koraidon does. And no, it's actually going to be a side flame charge. That's an
Ooh.
incredibly smart
That was
play.
yeah, that was absolutely genius there. I mean, I think most people would have expected it to be a double protect in that situation, especially because giving a free fake out to either Chain Pal or Koraidon is pretty solid here. But hitting your own teammate Incineroar with that flame charge gives that speed boost regardless, and now you're playing the speed tied game. Terrestrialization comes out on Shishio's Koraidon here. We've got double +1 speed, double fire Terra on the field here. And then we have Glory going for it. That protect here. But now does that double up into this chain pow? No, the collision course going into the opposing Koraidon here. Still leaving chain pow to go with an ice crash. Not going to do any damage here from the fire terrestrialization, the knockoff coming out. And now chain pow is susceptible to anything that comes his way.
Yeah, this is a horrible situation if you're Glory, because now you've just protected on the previous turn the Champao -2 in terms of attack because of those intimidate drops repeating and repeating. Sucker Punch just going into that Karide on the opposing side, barely doing any damage. Collision Chorus is almost a free hit at this point, going to be doing so much damage in this Koraidon, is going to be picking up the KO. So now the restricted
Oof.
on Glory's team is now out of this match.
Yeah, Glory unfortunately is not able to make the best of her situation being that +1 speed. And she's still just doing really, really well to bring it back by hitting that really early flame charge. And I guess we're not going to talk about it as much because it didn't necessarily need to do that. But I believe that considering the idea of double protect there, it's still super smart. It's still worked out in the end because Incineroar has taken maybe a fourth of damage so far, maybe a fifth of damage actually, and now you have a +1 Koraidon on the field who is threatening both of these Pokemon that are left right now. Even with the Tailwind, even with the Sword of Ruin on the field, it looks like Shishio is just going to run riot in this game too.
Yeah, because the Champao does not have that Sacred Sword, you're actually not able to get that super effective damage into the Incineroar. Obviously, still at -2 attack, probably wouldn't have done too much. And it looks like that damage on the Flame Charge just doing significant amount of damage into that Whimsicott, getting that KO, and the Will-O-Wisp to just add insult to injury, tagging on that burn to the Champao, now going to be doing even less damage than it was already doing, on top of the fact that it's just now going to be on that timer. But when you have a Koraidon and one of the best Pokemon in the game, Incineroar, that is pretty much just going to be GG's. Glory is throwing in the towel with that forfeit, and this round number 2 is going to go to Shishio.
Yeah, and super, super well done there for Shishio to pick up those very, very important KOs to get that important speed boost. And honestly, in both games, come from a losing position to win this set 2-0 without dropping a game.
Yeah, we got to talk about that side target again because that was incredible, incredible sequencing. Because you know that the Chiampao with no Sacred Sword does not threaten any damage really into the Koraidon, especially the Incineroar. So going for Fake Out into the opposing Koraidon to make sure that it does not move no matter what, unless it obviously switch into Whimsicott, which more than likely you're not really going to want to do because you're just going to let your opponent take a free KO if they were to get an attack. But it wouldn't have mattered because the Chiampao is not doing anything. It goes for Protect. You have the Koraidon trying to go for an attack, but Shishio recognizing that I'm going to fake out the Koraidon instead, and the side target covers for double protect, knowing that you could always get that attack, speed boost, sorry, from that flame charge, and then you pretty much clean the rest of the game up with that speed advantage on the Koraidon with low HP Pokemon on Glory's side. It was game over from that point onward.
Yeah, I think there could have been a couple of more, like, a little bit aggressive options, or possibly pulling in the Whimsicott a little bit earlier to, especially because that exact situation is just completely invalidated if you get Whimsicott out on the floor there. The Protect was the in quotes, the smart move with the position that you had, with a really dangerous chain pow, like dangerous to chain pow Pokemon on the floor for Shishio, especially with fighting, with fire, with a knockoff on deck as well. And calling out that Koraidon was the win condition for Shishio, and he got it.
Yeah, and you have to think about, could you have brought in the Whimsicott safely to potentially reset either those Intimidate drops or just to get it on the field on the Koraidon slot, set up that Tailwind, and then you would eventually have that speed advantage for a few turns to potentially win this match. But then you have to think about, if they were to go to Flame Charge in one of the other slots, then you're now probably losing that Whimsicott, having to switch something back in, and then you're still in a losing position. So I think Shishio had the advantage of just with that fake up pressure, just constantly pushing it, making sure that you're locking down things. It was really up to Glory to try to find that way out, but it's such a hard read to make because one wrong move loses you the game, but there's so many wrong moves that could have lost you the game no matter what.
Agreed. And especially because it's also a mirror match, it came down to speed tying again. And then having that priority pressure with the Incineroar did a lot of heavy lifting there, and Incineroar switches from Shishio were near perfect, genuinely.
Mm.
Like, especially in game 1 where, went down a little bit, or it kind of with the 1 for 1 for both of the Raging Bolts brought out, some of the heavy hitters, and Incineroar's coming in, coming out, keeping, keeping more Pokemon at those lower health pools, or those lower attack pools, sorry, and then being able to pressure with Fake Out, pressure with Party Shot, and then get back in, back out, and Incineroar doing Incineroar things.
Not to mention, with those constant trainings early on in the first few turns, we did see that Koraidon going for that Flare Blitz into the Flutter Mane, which had caused so much trouble in game number 1, immediately getting rid of it. But it just turned down to that Koraidon mirror match where one Koraidon got the speed boost when it really mattered. And then you had the opposing side just not be able to get that speed advantage when they needed it at the right time, especially with when you have that Tailwind Whimsicott just not able to get it on the field at the right time. So it just didn't work out. And that's just kind of the plays that you need to make to win.
Yeah, I think Pokemon's such a fun game because you can't really necessarily call it a mistake, but it was definitely a very, very good read that unfortunately was not able to be hopped upon there by Glory, but very, very well done for Shishio to take that set 2-0 over there. And this wide league has been very, very fun so far, especially with the little bit of creative teams, but also that nice little normal feel about Regulation G.
Yeah, it's good to finally, I guess, good in a sense, to get back into that Regulation G mindset. You know, it's going to be back for the next 4 months. It's going to lead our way into potentially the GS Cup, the double restricted later on, could be the Worlds format. Haven't gotten official confirmation of what that's going to be just yet, but going into the later stages of the lifetime of this game, we're pretty much not going to be going back to what was Regulation H. It was a miracle that we even got Regulation H, but we kind of have to deal with the fact that we're going to be living with the legendaries from here on out. It is just the life of the party at this point. All those sub legendaries, restricted legendaries, and then whatever Legends CA if we even get those Pokemon in this game. So that could also be a major factor in that match too. But you know what? Let's take a short break going into round number 3. We finished our round number 2 in a quick 2-0. Shishio is going to be winning that one, moving on to 2-0. Glory was here still at 101, could still make that final bracket. Remember, this is a charity event for Toys for Tots, and the winner of this match is going to be getting $300 of their choice charity. So it is a great cause. We hope to see you in round number 3. Stay tuned and don't go anywhere, everyone.